If you thought United Airlines was bad, you're gonna love these stories. This world is a strange one. Airports are one of the most irritating places to endure, besides putting up with dozens of other people and their smells and chatter. You've got to go through process after process being checked, scanned, and sometimes even prodded to ensure you're not a threat to others. Yet it seems like real and imminent threats get through, and they're all too close. Enjoy these allegedly true airport horror stories. A massive thank you goes out to all 64 of my patrons for supporting this channel. You can help too. Go to patreon.com/darknessprevails to become a patron to unlock shoutouts, dozens of secret episodes, and exclusive merchandise. And before we start, I'll let you know we're looking for elementary school stories. If you were scarred for life, send your story to us at deathbyfear.com. Now, you've been selected for a full cavity search. Number 1. My Airport Stalker. Submitted by William V. This experience has scarred me for life, and not a day goes by without me thinking about it, so you guys are in for a treat. Now, at the time, I was 10 years old, and I had become a very cautious child, always checking my surroundings. Even still, I was a bit careless this day. It was summer, and I was going to visit my aunt in Florida with a couple of my friends. The plane was scheduled to depart at 11:30 p.m., and that's when everything went down. My friends and I were waiting and just goofing around. It was only 11, and we had 30 more minutes to go. And then we saw this guy who was just staring at us the entire time we waited. The man was about 6 feet tall, had dirty clothes and a long, scraggly beard. Now, I didn't instantly think this was unusual, because who wouldn't look at kids goofing off? But the strange thing was that the guy didn't have any luggage, and he looked like he wasn't waiting for anything, just staring. 10 minutes passed by, and my friend Kyle had to go to the bathroom, which reminded all of us that we needed to go as well. We had been holding it for a while. At the time, the guy seemed to have left, so I let my guard down, but it turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. When we went into the bathroom, oddly, the lights turned off. I quickly stepped back outside, and all the power was on out there. This was weird, but I turned my phone light on and went to do my business, my friends joining me. But once we were all inside, we heard a thud behind us and a click at the door. When we turned around, standing there in the bleak light of my phone was the same man who had been staring at us. Except this time he wasn't empty-handed. He was holding a camera and a hammer. He took a step towards us, and we took steps back. He then said to us, "Smile for the camera." I was scared beyond belief, and after that step I was frozen. He then tugged at his own shirt in some sort of gesture, then spoke again. "Take it off." Again, I couldn't move, but I saw that my friends were fearing for their lives so much that they obeyed. He stepped towards me and said, "You better get on with it, kid." But I still could not move. Then he took another step closer. The adrenaline was pumping through my body, and he said to me, "If you don't do what I say, I'm gonna have to smash your skull in, or maybe one of your friends." That's when he suddenly grabbed Kyle, one of my friends, and covered his mouth with his hand. Then he threatened me. "Still want to put up a fight?" At this point, we were all terrified, but now we were determined. We had to protect ourselves. We had to protect Kyle. All at once, we ran towards him, and he raised that hammer. I closed my eyes, and then I heard the sound of the door slamming open, then the booming voices of someone telling him to drop the weapon. Thinking that it was over, I opened my eyes, and I saw 2 security guards behind him, with what looked to be the janitor rubbing his head. We were saved, just in the nick of time. They arrested the man, and Kyle was sent to the hospital, but he was fine. Just a little freaked out. I think we all were freaked out for some time after that. If you haven't guessed it yet, apparently this crazy man knocked out the janitor just so he could take his keys and lock us in the bathroom. I guess he didn't think that someone else would have a key to the bathroom and would be stopping by for a visit. This happened about 5 years ago, and sadly, I think it'll always feel like it happened yesterday. Number 2. The Men from the Airport. Submitted by Dziugas. I'm 16 years old, and I live in Lithuania, and a couple of my siblings live in England, 2 in London and 1 in Newcastle. My sister and her 2 kids were coming home from London to Vilnius to visit us, and I was so happy to see her after a whole year. Most of our time we spent at home, because it was winter and we didn't really want to be in the cold, especially with 2 little kids running around. The whole week passed by too quickly, and before I knew it, it was time for her to go back home to London. Her flight was at 4 a.m., and my house is not really far from the airport, maybe 30 minutes by taxi. We woke up at 2 in the morning, and I decided to go with her to the airport and help her with her bags. She thought that was a great idea. Around 2:30 in the morning, we were ready to go. We packed our stuff into the taxi and we left. At around 3, we were in the airport. We quickly said our goodbyes, and she was heading toward the security checks. As I was watching her go, I noticed that it was 3 a.m. and no public transport was going, so I was pretty much stuck in the airport until later. Had I thought I had more, I would have kept the taxi around. I connected to the airport's Wi-Fi and checked the bus schedules, and the first bus was set to appear at 5:50 a.m. I really didn't want to stay that long, so I checked Airport Express train too, and the first one to arrive would be at 4:45. So my mind was clear what I was taking. I waited almost 2 hours sitting in the waiting room watching YouTube videos on my phone. After a long wait, it was finally time to go to the train platform. I made my way outside the airport to go to the platform, which is outside. As I stopped at the pedestrian crossing, looking to different directions for cars to pass, I noticed a man walking to me, but he was making sure to keep his distance away from me. He was wearing all black, and he had a hood over his head, but he wasn't carrying any bags. He was clearly not a passenger or anything like that. I crossed the pedestrian crossing, and I made my way to a staircase which led down to the platform. I stood at the most remote corner of the platform to watch the stairs to see if that man came down, but no one did, so for a time I forgot about the man. About 10 minutes later, I saw the headlights of the train coming. I stepped into the train and sat down. As the train driver announced that we were leaving soon, suddenly, the same man from earlier ran down the stairs and stepped into the train as well. The train doors then closed, and we were moving to the central Vilnius railway station. The conductor came and asked me to pay for the ticket. I had a Lithuanian Railways discount card, so I paid much less. Then the conductor came to the man. He handed over the money, and I heard him say, "Keep the change, sweetie," in a really creepy voice. Just from hearing that, I got goosebumps. When we arrived at the central station, I got off from the train as quickly as possible, and I ran to an underground tunnel which leads to the station and exits the town. In front of that station, there is a big circle-shaped road with a lot of bus stops, all of them going to and from Vilnius. I had to take bus number 16, which is going to the outside of town, because I live outside the city. But there was another problem. There was still half an hour till the next bus to my destination, so I had to play another waiting game. I bought some coffee, and as soon as I took my first sip, I saw that strange hooded man again. He was looking right at me from the corner of the stop. When he saw that I noticed him, he began to walk over, and he sat down at the bench. I was 100% sure that this man was following me. But why? All that time I was waiting for a bus, I was glancing towards the man, and he was always staring at me, not moving a centimeter. Finally, my bus arrived and I got on. Yet, so did the man. Slowly, the bus left the city, and we were moving onto Highway Vilnius towards Minsk. Steadily, the bus was getting ever closer to my stop, and I was really scared that this man might do something to me as soon as I got off. After all, the area I live is surrounded by woods. We would be completely isolated, not to mention it's winter, so early in the morning like this, everything's still very dark. The bus driver soon announced my stop, and I was standing by the bus door ready to get off. As soon as it stopped, I got off. I walked a few steps and glanced over my shoulder, and I saw that the same man, and of course, my worst fears were confirmed, because he was now getting off as well. Tears were streaming down my cheeks, and I just couldn't stop them. I tried to remain calm. I felt that if I began to run, that he would initiate, that he would start to run after me, and then things would only go downhill from there. So I walked calmly on the side of the road towards my house in the woods near it. When I was about to enter the woods, I opened my cell phone's frontal camera, and the light of the highway showed the man now running towards me. It seems that this was now his time to strike, whatever he wanted to do. I quickly ran into the woods and hid behind the largest bush I could find, hoping that he didn't see me. But all too late did I realize that the snow on the ground would give me away. Everything was white, and I could be easily spotted. I saw the man approach the bush, then he stopped a couple of meters away from me and yelled in that same creepy voice, "Oh, come on. Get out here and let's get this over quickly. There's no point in drawing this out." He looked around, and I saw that he was brandishing something metal in his hand, and with all the fear built up in me, I could only assume he was holding some sort of knife. Luckily, I guess he didn't know I was really in that bush. He just had the general direction, because he began to walk further down the woods, still calling for me. As soon as he was far enough away, I got up and ran straight back to the highway, hoping to stop someone's car or something. I needed to get someone to help me. And then there was an answer to my prayers. A police car was approaching. I stood out in front of it, waving my hands. I even jumped up and down to get their attention. The police stopped, and they seemed exasperated at a crazy man jumping in front of them. But as soon as they stepped out of their car, I explained everything to the two police officers. They suggested to take me home, and I of course agreed. They took me back to my house, and I locked every door. They explained everything to my parents and said that they will patrol the area for another week. But first they searched the woods and the surrounding area. By then it was 6 in the morning, and I was not ready to sleep. A week goes by, and unfortunately the police found no one. And luckily I heard nothing more of that man. Honestly, I don't know what he wanted with me, what he was planning on doing. But I'm still and permanently scared down to the core. I'm scared of those woods, the last place I saw that man. But this man also got off at my stop, so he knows where I live. If he ever wanted to come back, he could. That thought keeps me up at night. Number 3. Stalker at the Airport. Submitted by Sky. My sister, my dad, and I were coming back to the airport in LA from a trip to Disneyland. Before arriving at the airport, we stopped to eat lunch at a Denny's. It was a really hot day, about 78 degrees. This will play into the story later. I was the last person to walk through the doors going into Denny's. As I was walking in, I saw out of the corner of my eye a very tall and buff-looking man. I didn't think much of it. Nothing more than the fact that he stuck out like a sore thumb, and then I pushed it out of my head like most things. After lunch, we decided to stop at a beach. This beach was right next to an old oil company and a garbage dump, one on either side, so we didn't go swimming. The sand was really hot from sitting under the sun all day, so my sister and I decided to stick our toes in the water instead. We were having fun with just that. Then again, I saw that strangely tall and built man. He was standing about 30 feet away from me. He was wearing all black. It was strange seeing someone so in shape, fully clothed at the beach on a hot day. It didn't make sense if you ask me. He had on a hat too, so I couldn't really see his face. But again, I just shrugged it off and I continued having fun. The beach we were at had a slope in the sand where I imagined the water came up to, and I saw the man sitting there. Me and my sister started running up and down the edge of the sand, trying to see who could stay up there the longest. It seemed every time I peered over at the man, he was getting closer and closer to us. He had once been 30 feet away or so, but now he was only about 15 feet away. But being the dumb and naive 13-year-old I was, I simply ignored it still, and soon I even forgot about it. After spending about 2 more hours at the beach, we finally left. I saw the man get into a beaten-up black truck, and the windows were really darkly tinted. You couldn't see anything on the other side. The man stayed a good distance away from our car, but still close enough where I could watch him out of my dad's side mirror. At this point, I was a bit weirded out that he had decided to leave the moment we did. Fast forward to when we got to the airport. We walked around a little bit after getting our tickets, and so far I didn't see the man, but now I was looking for him. More than anything, I felt something was off. I started to calm down a little bit. Maybe he hadn't followed us this time, but that feeling was short-lived, because I soon saw the huge man sitting in a chair on the other side of the security gates. I was freaking out now, but I didn't want him to see it, so I left all my paranoid feelings inside. I should have told my parents. But at the time, I remember feeling embarrassed and vulnerable. The thought of saying anything to anyone, it made me feel weird. We quickly got through security. I wanted to be out of the gaze of this man. I wanted him to stop looking. Even if my parents weren't around, I wanted to feel away from him. So I told my dad that I had to use the bathroom. I began walking towards the sign when I heard loud footsteps behind me. I was too scared to look, for I already knew who it was, but I did not know what he wanted me for. I walked faster, and I quickly got to the bathroom and just looked in the mirror, hoping and praying he wasn't waiting for me outside. I gathered up all the courage I could muster, and I walked out the bathroom door. And of course, he was standing there right outside. Tense and nervous, I walked past him and towards my family. I couldn't stop wondering what was with this guy. What was he doing trying to freak me out like this? Soon we boarded our plane, only to have to get back off again due to a small crack in the windshield. So we got off, and I was more than frustrated. We walked around the airport, eventually stopping for some food. We saw this seafood place and gave it a try. My dad got clam chowder, and my sister and I got Caesar salads. I was trying to forget everything. If I was with my family, I thought, I would be safe. So I focused on the soccer game going on the TV, to try to keep my mind from reeling. And then the man walked in, only to sit down at the table across the room from us. He made sure to sit at an angle, so he was right in the center of my vision. Our food came fast, and he ordered too. He was still wearing that hat, and I still didn't know what he looked like. His food arrived shortly after, and to make matters even freakier, this bastard ordered the same food as me. I quickly finished my terrible salad, and my dad paid for our food and we left. It was now almost 10 o'clock at night, and I was very tired. Eventually, against my dad's shoulder, I fell asleep. But I woke up to a start a few minutes later, feeling what felt like hot breath down my neck. I jumped out of my seat and turned around, only to see nothing. I sat back down and tried to fall back asleep, only to fail again. I was sure that what I had felt was real, and I wasn't about to let it happen again. 2 hours passed, and the rest of my family was awake. Me and my sister go and get some snacks for the plane and head back to our seats. Our plane is now at the airport and ready, and we gather our belongings and get on the plane. Luckily, the man was nowhere to be seen. I'm sitting on the plane and I take the window seat. I turn on my phone and have a notification from Top Buzz. It says that a wanted sex offender had finally been caught at the LAX airport, and it didn't take me long to realize that the man who had been stalking me was that sex offender. It scares me to think about what could have happened if someone hadn't caught him. Number 4. My Airport Story. Submitted by Tarik B. During the summer of 2016, me, my brother, and my mother decided to take a break from everything. Usually we aren't those types of people who go out on 5-star vacations or anything like that. Plus, we can barely afford any vacation at all. Well, my dad drove all 3 of us out to the Toronto airport. It was a Sunday, I believe, and honestly, I didn't feel too great about leaving my dad alone, but he told us to go on and have fun. Eventually, after a lazy, tiring 5-hour trip to the airport, I ended up getting carsick. I threw up twice and wanted to do a lot more, but I tried my best to hold it in so I didn't embarrass myself in the public. We said our goodbyes to Dad and went through the front gate. We waited for about 2 hours. Every second that passed, my stomach felt more and more sick. I told my mother I had to go to the washroom. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My brother, being the idiot he was, just smirked and gave a little chuckle. I jogged over to the nearest restroom and ended up finding myself not sick anymore. I couldn't throw up. It was a bit weird, but I tried forcing it out, but it just wouldn't happen. I sat there for about 5 minutes until I knew it wasn't any good. Before I could get up and wash my hands and actually leave this place, I realized that the whole time I was in that bathroom stall, someone was in the other one right next to mine. I didn't really care, as I just brushed it off with a sigh. But what happened next was, in fact, just plain weird, and it got a lot worse later on. The moment I walked up to the bathroom sink and started washing my hands, this man, or whoever it really was, spoke to me. He said something. I didn't catch what it was at first over the sound of water splashing against my hands, so I shut the faucet off and stood there, droplets of water hitting the sides of the sink, and I was just waiting until he said something again. After a solid 12 seconds, I asked, excuse me, are you talking to me? He eventually replied, a manly yet extremely soft giggle, like he was drunk or something. At that point, I figured my mom and brother are probably worried about me, so I decided that was enough to make me leave the restroom almost as quick as I entered. I took 3 solid steps toward the exit, and what happened next felt almost like it was straight out of a horror movie. Just as I was about to open the door, I heard the man again, this time much more clear.
Leaving already, Tarik?
My heart sank into my already sick stomach. I felt weak, and I couldn't say anything in reply. Just knowing that this stranger knows my real name, it put me into shock, but I couldn't help but whisper to myself, what the hell? I opened the bathroom door and almost burst out of there. Some people sitting down near the gates looked at me in surprise, like I just came out of a robbery. I went over to my mom and my brother. I told them that someone was in the washroom with me, and he knew my name, that he asked me why I was leaving him. I don't think my mom took me seriously. She gave me this sarcastic look, and she smiled, telling me to stop screwing around. But I was serious. I gave no expression but fear towards my mom and brother, and soon they both grew to the fact that I was being serious. Her smile almost instantly turned into nothing. She looked at me and asked me if I was being honest. My brother already stood up, walking towards the washroom like the hero he is. I followed. Keep in mind that my brother is 20. He could be a jerk sometimes, but he was a very protective brother. My mother, on the other hand, went over to the nearby traffic police and told them what I saw. My brother, who I was following, almost smashed the bathroom door open, and then he yelled who was in the stall. My brother took a slight look under the stall opening. He saw the shoes that I saw. He banged on the door and asked the man to come out and show himself. I felt like a hero myself. I couldn't wait to see this freak. My brother eventually went to the stall I was in and hopped onto the toilet, looking over the stall where the man was. But when he peeked over, he saw nothing. There were shoes there on the floor, but there was nobody there. There was no one in the stall. My brother had this haunting expression on his face. It got me to wipe my dirty smile off, and then my expression turned to fear once more. My brother hopped over to the locked stall the man was in and unlocked it for me. What we saw that day prevented us from actually taking this vacation, because in that very single stall, the one I thought a man had been in, there were carvings on the steel metal walls of my name, Tarik, carved into the metal over and over. My heart sank, and I thought to myself, has this man been following me? But I hadn't seen anyone enter or exit that bathroom after. There's no way anyone would have gotten out of there without us seeing. Besides that, how had he known my name? Either this was a very talented and intimate stalker, or something else was going on at this airport. Ever since then, I felt very paranoid. I find myself glancing over my shoulder more than I ever used to. And to this day, I don't know if it was a haunting or a stalking. And better yet, I don't know if it's still going on. And number 5, Airport Glitch, submitted by Austin G. I've only ever flown once in my life, and it scared the heck out of me. That may just be because I was 6 at the time. Today, though, I'm going to be telling you about the second time I almost flew. Fortunately, or rather unfortunately, we never got further than the airport. On this occasion, I was 10 years old. I was a kid almost completely distracted by my Game Boy Advance, with Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga shoved in my face. I followed my mom and my grandma to each stop through the crowds of people, and different stops through the airport. And that's when the horror began. I was paying a bit too much attention to my game when I suddenly walked into what I thought was my mother's bag. But when I looked up, I soon realized it was not my mother. Apparently, I don't know when, I must have begun following some stranger while I wasn't paying attention. As a coddled 10-year-old kid, I quickly started to panic. I didn't think that there would be any possible way I'd find my mother and grandmother in this massive crowd of random people. Quickly, though, I found out that that wasn't the worst of my problems. Not only had I lost my family, but the hustle and bustle had stopped as well. I mean, everyone around me was standing completely still. I looked around, into the eyes of at least a dozen different people, each of them never blinking, never turning, never flinching. They didn't move an inch. Everything in my vision, everyone, was now completely motionless, no matter where I turned. I was panicking before, but now I was so scared that I couldn't breathe. Why was everyone frozen like that? I started to run, pushing past the stone block like people. I had to find my mother. I had to know she wasn't frozen too. What was even eerier was the fact that the sound of the hustling and bustling of people was still going, as if it was playing from some hidden sound system, like it had never been playing from the now motionless people around me. It was hard to breathe, and then it was hard to see as tears began to fall down my face. And then, just as quickly as it all happened, I felt arms around me. I looked up to see my mom asking me where I wandered off to, and everyone was back to their old selves. People were moving. People were boarding and unboarding planes. Everything was right again. But I was still hysterical. I was confused and terrified. I couldn't even find it in myself to do more than stutter when I tried to explain to my mom what had happened. They were irritated, but they knew that flying was probably a bad idea with a 10-year-old going insane. I ended up staying with relatives when they eventually did rebook the trip. To this day, I have no idea what happened. It was all so real and vivid, so creepy. I wish I could say that I had been dreaming, but I remember it very, very clearly. This was no dream. I remember the sounds, the sights, the feel of the people as I pushed into them. I'm just glad everything didn't get stuck like that. It's hard enough to save up the money and get on a plane, yet there are so many people and entities out there that don't care where you might be. They just want to see you dead. So watch your back and your luggage before someone or something begins to rip into both of you. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Go to patreon.com/darknessprevails to support this channel and unlock goodies. And of course, don't forget to send us your elementary school scary stories soon at deathbyfear.com. Thanks. A big shout out goes out to my newest patrons. They are Rock Alien V, Cassandra Sanchez, Meredith Konicki, Joe Curtis Rindle, Jose Morales, Jose Vizcaino, Carlos Andrade, Kirsty Shore, Harold W. Norris, Dallas Wilson, La Flame, Andrew Push, Big H, Gray Roses, Sean LeBlanc, Peter Y. Gong Jr., Grayson Montgomery, Jake Rowan, Alex Bartuick, Andrew Alliser, Jacob Bauer, Catherine Delahunty, Philip Sim, Ashley Champion, Matthew Carell, Brian Allen McClendon, Hera Snow, Mur Sodansky, Lightning Spirit, Robert, Maiva Corky, Nostran, Rebecca Rodolfo, Michael Bell, Susan Ashner, Agent Buckwell, Aaron Leonhardt, Brian Watson. The YouTube channel Unit 522, Somnium 2, Nicholas Napier, Beth Butterworth, Ademazibo, Jasmine Berg, Jennifer Ward, Aline Gale, Mercedes 1369, Max DeVille, Spooky, Alex, Jeremy Coey, Catherine Davis, and Candace. Thank you all so much for keeping Darkness Prevails alive.